Welcome everybody, but especially Dan Donovan, Congressman Donovan. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for joining us. Now, how do I know Dan Donovan? Not because I was in Congress, but because I ran, like Peter's running now for high office, I ran for the U.S. Senate. In 2010, you were running for Attorney General, I believe, of the state.
Yep.
And I think you were already the district attorney.
I was.
For Staten Island. Right. When I was a congressman, you're talking about 1985 to 89, we had 34 members of Congress from New York State, 17 Republicans, 17 Democrats. Think about it, your own New York State.
Those are the good old days.
Now we're down. Why is the Northeast losing power? I don't mean power to run anything, I mean power, political power. We're down to 27. Why? Florida, Texas, California, Georgia, North Carolina are all growing. We're not growing. We're staying still and maybe decreasing a little bit, and that's a problem. So the beauty of our system is that the House of Representatives is representing the people, and they don't change the number of congressmen. So they have to reallocate every 10 years how many people are represented by the same number of congressmen. So now we're down from 34 to 27, and I believe we have maybe
9 Republicans.
up to 9 now, up to 9. So at least we've got 9 now, but I think we were way below that a couple of years ago.
But I'm the only one from New York City.
Right, right. And the closest one to you is another good friend of ours, Lee Zeldin, out in Suffolk County. Now, the interesting thing about Staten Island is it's one of the few counties that I won when I ran for the U.S. Senate.
Interesting.
But it has a very large population of Albanian Americans, mainly from what is now called Macedonia. Albanians get very kind of upset when people say, you know, he's from Macedonia. They don't consider themselves from those states. They consider themselves from the ancestral lands that are in those states today, called Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Northern Greece. Well, Kosovo is 95% Albanian, and then you have Albania. So you've got 6 countries. Now, if you drew a line, Dan, around the 7 million Albanians, they're all contiguous.
Right.
This was the nation that emerged from the Ottoman Empire in 1912. They put their own flag up, but they weren't recognized by anybody. And unfortunately, it took years and years, up until probably 1921, before they realized that there had to be an Albanian state. Would you believe that from 1912 to 1921, when Yugoslavia was formed as a state, as part of the settlement after World War I, there were people who said, Albanians, they're not a separate race, they're Slavs. So you had a lot of adversarial people running around while the Ottoman Empire was crumbling. That last 100 years, the Greeks got out in 1846, the Serbs got out in 1860. Right away, they started talking against the Albanians because the Albanians had made their peace with the fact that they were occupied 425 years and they were going to be there forever, and they got all the best positions. So the Greeks were jealous, the Serbs were jealous, and they didn't want anything to say anything good about Albanians. So the West started hearing, oh, these Albanians are bad people, bad people, bad people. By the time they announced their independence, already the lobby had worked, and they were thinking, hey, these Albanians are not going to get a state. It took a U.S. president, Woodrow Wilson, to make the compromise that half those 7 million people would be put in a state called Albania, and the other half, they left them on the borders in 5 other political jurisdictions. That's how complicated. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
This is how complicated the world is today for the Albanian people, because now they've got families living in those states. Each one of those states has its own politics. When I do any lobbying with Shirley, we have to understand what's going on in those states. Why aren't Albanians being represented in those governments fairly? And that's the problem we have in Macedonia. And that's why I wish you were at the hearing, but you have your own problems. I just testified about a month ago at the
This is
Foreign
in the
Affairs
subcommittee.
and
Or-
Rawbackers.
Oh,
But I'm
is that
gonna-
right? Dana's
yeah.
Yeah,
subcommittee?
I'm going to send you the testimony. I'll send you the DVD we have on it, so your staff can hear what the issues are. And the written testimony will come out soon too, because focusing on Macedonia, which is what we're going to do today. We have people here from Albania, we have them from all over, and our lead represents them all. Represents mainly American interests. I mean, we're not a foreign agent. Foreign agents, as you know, have to register
Right.
Department of Justice. No, we are very strict in our way we do things, so that anything we do, even when we're at hearings, the key is what is in the interest of the United States of America. All right? And when you can say that we've got in this country 750,000 Albanians with families, now we're concerned about their families over there. And that's basically what I've used for 29 years. 4 years as a congressman, 25 years as an independent, unpaid representative, advocate for the Albanian people, for their self-determination, for their human rights, and things like that, okay? And as you can see, we've been very successful because we've been able to even create a new state called Kosovo. Without the Albanian American Civic League, there would not be a new state called Kosovo. We took on Milosevic, we got him indicted. You were probably not involved in the Congress in those days. Shirley and I got the Congress of the United States of America to indict this guy as a war criminal right after the war. He was only indicted a year later by the international community and brought to The Hague, and Shirley and I went there to testify
I wrote
against him.
the major testimony against Milosevic for The Hague.
So we targeted Milosevic, figuring that if we can get rid of him, because he was the biggest enemy of the Albanian people. Now, there are new Milosevic's, by the way.
Yes.
This guy, and now let me shift right away, because I don't want to make this a history course. Gruevski, who has controlled Macedonia for the last 10 years or so, is as bad. He hasn't killed anybody with a gun, with AK-47s, but many people have been killed. Many Albanians, falsely arrested, falsely put on trial, long prison sentences, and we're still dealing with that. But one of the reasons we had this hearing, and Shirley and I had to lobby hard for it, because, as you know, Rawbacker is involved with a lot of things that Eurasia and Europe Committee, and he was more interested, and is still more, in his own mind, he's thinking Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, where the action is for the United States of America. Macedonia is kind of like a sidebar for most people. But you've got, in our count, 800,000 Albanians in Macedonia, and maybe more than 1 million. We believe half the people of Macedonia are Albanian, but they don't let you count. They don't like census data. They want you to use the old communist system, just undercount and carry it forward. And one of the first experiences I had, and I got arrested for it, was going there in 1992 on a census that was created by the Albanian people, because in '92 they wanted to separate from the Slavs by having their own federation. In other words, like Yugoslavia represented 6 republics and 2 provinces, federation. They said, well, we probably can't change the state Macedonia, so at least let us have control with our own budget for education, judiciary, things like that in our areas, because there are areas in Macedonia which are specifically Albanian, believe it or not. There are other areas that have become mixed, but many Albanians live in the western part of Macedonia. All right? The other part of Macedonia is mainly ethnic Bulgarians and Serbs that moved in, because one of the things the Serbs did over the years after World War II was to recolonize Kosovo, Serbia with Serbs. This was Tito and then Milosevic to make some kind of a control for them. It didn't work, but what's happened is we've had corrupt political leaders getting control, and we're now fighting on how to get rid of them there, in Kosovo and Albania. The problem is that they've gone from communism to corruption. This is the biggest problem the United States has. We don't like to talk about it because we figure Europe now is going to take care of it. But these guys and ladies know from the area, Europe never takes care of anything when it comes to Albanians. We always have to go in to clean up the mess. So my message is, let's not wait for that mess. That's what I said at this hearing. from the State Department. There are things we can do now. The United States has to be more involved. We have to be vigilant. We have to, now, in Macedonia in particular, hang on. We got to be sure that the promises made 15 years ago, endorsed by the United States of America and the European Union, called the Ohrid Agreement, O'Hare Agreement, there's two words that are used, where this was the settlement of the war that spilled over from Kosovo into Macedonia, where they had their own army. And to settle that, we had to get the United States and Europe and the leaders in Macedonia, and the key one then was Arben Jaferi, the person we worked with the most. He died of Parkinson's disease. So we were stuck without a good leader. We tried to continue, but what happened was in those 15 years, the Slavs are very smart. They bought off the Albanian leaders. They know how to use money. They know how to use coercion. They know how to use patronage in the soft sense. And right now you've got pretty much close to a mafia state that is just building parties and rich families, and the Albanian people are left behind. Now, did I say it right or not?
You said it right,
Yes, sir.
If I say anything that you guys don't agree with, please speak up, because I'm considered a troublemaker. State Department, no, really. State Department, Dioguardi is a troublemaker. Yeah, troublemaker.
Friends, you're a troublemaker.
No, that's looking for justice. Justice. And I can't be bought. I'm not looking for titles, I'm not looking for a job, and I'm not looking to get paid. That's dangerous for people who want to use money. Shirley and I are advocates for this group of people. Now, how did it start that I have this love for the Albanian people? When I got to Congress, Albanians found out my father spoke Albanian as well as Italian. Did I know about the history of why Albanians got to Italy? No, because my parents had no education. They came here as poor farm people from the southern part of Italy. But I was educated so fast by hundreds and thousands of Albanians who came to my home, came to my office. They said, Joe, you are a Bresh. Your people saved our language. While the Turks chased us out of Albania in the middle of the 15th century, it was those Catholic monks, the Arbrecht, because all in those days, and we're not trying to make this religious, all Albanians were Catholic and Orthodox. It was the Ottoman Empire, 425 years, that put the screws on them, and after that time, people say, hey, we need to support our families here. Can't get away from these people. So, but they became nominally Muslims. You don't see them running around with headscarves and burqas and things like that. But you can't believe the violent language used against the Albanians, drug dealers, fundamentalists, jihadists. You know, we have to face this. Public relations. And Albanians do not spend any money on public relations. They have to spend their money on survival. See these guys here? A lot of the money they make, they send right back there to keep the families alive. The largest families in Europe today are the Albanian families. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they haven't stopped. That's what's got the Slavs all nervous, because they are, like the Greeks, not even replacing themselves. Less than 2 kids a family. Albanians have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they see that they have to deal with it now, because later on, these may become Albanian states. Am I right?
Yes.
And Macedonia would be at the top of the list. Do we sell that? No. And do we really want that? Well, you know, when you're not being served by your government, and so much injustice is being put on your people, and you can't get jobs, because here, when we signed that Ohrid Agreement 15 years ago, one of the first things it was supposed to do was to give the Albanian people a representative number of jobs in the government, because those are the only jobs around. That's what the parties did. They built a state on parties, and they gave jobs to who supported them. So the problem is, when you don't have a job, how do you support your family? Where's your dignity? Thank God these men were driven out, many of them, not these two, by Milosevic. Now they're all over Europe making money. I went to Berlin. 300, in Berlin alone, restaurants owned by Albanians. And you got to see these upscale restaurants. Unbelievable.
5-star.
And they make plenty of money. Why? And they have to send it back. The bulk of their families are still living there. Albanians are tied to their land. Look what happened after the Kosovo War. 1 million people driven by this New Age Hitler, Milosevic, out of Kosovo, and he had the idiocy to put them on railroad cars, and we already had the Jewish lobby on our side. Then the Jews figured out who he was for sure, because it was all over TV. 1 million of them in camps in Macedonia. As soon as the war was over, they came back. Every one of them came back. Every house was destroyed. You couldn't believe the reconstruction that went on. And most of that money came from where? Right here, United States of America, yes. Sons and daughters. These are the Albanian people. No one has been able to assimilate them in thousands of years. Not the Romans, not the Greeks, not the Serbs, not the Turks. They've tried to extinguish their religion, couldn't be done. Thank God for the Arbresh, my father's people. Today you have 51 Albanian-speaking villages in southern Italy, still speaking the language. We brought them to the parade that I know you tried to come, so that they could hear them. Mm-hmm. And there were tears in their eyes, that here they're still speaking kind of an older form of the Albanian, but it's 80% at least. They understand each other, but some Italian words have crept in already. So it's an amazing story that they're still standing. That's how good these people are. And who are the most pro-American people in Europe today? The Albanian people. Am I saying something wrong?
Yes, sir.
Go any place. Look at Bush when he went to Albania. 400,000 people. USA! USA!
90 seconds.
We were begging Bill Clinton to recognize a new place called Kosovo. He wouldn't do it. We dragged him kicking and screaming. And I'm not going to get into the politics of the Democrats and Republicans on this, but we got support from both sides. And I'll give you all the great names that we've used. But we pushed them kicking and screaming. Look at my YouTube things on CNN, how I went on to say, how? You can't let what happened in Bosnia happen now in Kosovo. We lost 250,000 innocent people killed. And that's now going to happen in Kosovo, because the biggest prize for the Serbs has always been Kosovo. They say it's their Jerusalem. They lost a battle in 1389 fighting the Turks side by side, Christian Albanians, and right afterwards they claimed this is their Jerusalem. They are, what did J. Edgar Hoover write about communism? Masters of Deceit, remember that book? I remember the Jesuits wanted us to read that book. They hated communism. Masters of Deceit. And that's what they are today. You cannot believe any Slav, whether it's a Russian, whether it's a Serb, whether it's Macedonian. They have no moral values when it comes to this kind of thing. And even Greece, the religions there, you got to understand, the Orthodox religions are like this with the state. We believe in separation of church and state, and they fool a lot of Americans. Oh, we're Christian just like you. Yeah, but you're taking your orders from the government. We separate church and state. They don't. And that's another thing that affects the Albanians. So, point is, thank God, at least Clinton dropped the bombs on Serbia. That stopped Milosevic. We got him indicted. But then we had to work from the year 2000 to the year 2008 to form this state called Kosovo. And that's what we did. And Bush. Now, everybody was talking about Clinton. See Fatan here? He organized a group of young Albanians. He's been working with us since 2002. He goes back and forms, he's educated at Harvard here, and this is the benefits of America. He goes back, forms a group, and gets 1 million signatures called Neskrimi in Albanian. We take that to Henry Hyde. You know Henry?
Yep.
Great man, right? Henry Hyde was the chairman of the committee after Gilman and after Dante Fasel, and then just before Lantos. And he brought those signatures, because we asked him to the White House. That's what got George W. Bush to recognize Kosovo. And that was done in 2008. Look at the distance between the war and 2008. We did that. It's all on film. I got Henry Hyde sitting in his foreign affairs room that's now called the Hyde Room, right? Doing that. So, basically, what we're here for is, number one, to support you as a great American. I know who you are, and they know who you are.
Thank you.
Your family, I still have your father's, Dan Donovan Sr. Great. He was a conservative leader from Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Right. One of the first ones to support me.
Thank you, buddy.
And I really appreciate that. But your family's good. You're a great American, and we want to be sure that you have not only enough for your own race, because I don't think you're ever going to be beat here, but I want you, excuse me, just pull up a seat there.
Yeah, we're going to need...
We know how, and I want to tell them how it works. You really don't need, in my mind, much money to win. But what you need money for, and they need you to have it, is to get seniority and power in Congress. You need to get to the point, and I did a lot, and we're now doing this with Rohrabacher. Rohrabacher cannot lose that race either. But he needs money to keep his position as chairman of that committee, and one day we want you to be chairman. Don't you want him to be the chairman of Foreign Affairs?
I'd like to be chairman of Foreign Affairs too.
All right, there it is. So what we got to do is we got to educate the Albanian people, and we're starting here, because we've got 2 people here now that are co-chairman of this dinner that are very active in this community, and especially from the town of Dibra, which is a large Albanian town. By the way, a town that was split after World War I in half, so that they have part of it in Albania, part of it, is that right? Part of it in Macedonia.
It's
Unbelievable.
60% of the grounds they are here than there.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. So what I'm saying is, we want to be sure that we get the word out that Congressman Donovan is going to be one of our top priorities, that we're going to raise as much money as we can to make him look good so he gets the power that you need. And power in Congress comes from those senior positions. All right? Thank God we got Rohrabacher there now. And, now.
Are you on that subcommittee? I keep forgetting that.
No, I
didn't
have
think so.
Middle East
I thought so, yes.
and West,
Right.
and I have Africa.
Right.
But Dana's a good friend of mine. I sit next to Dana
Good.
during
Right.
because Dana comes to everybody's subcommittee
Right.
hearings, and he's a big
He's very involved in the Middle East.
Middle East, Russia.
Right.
He's all over the place. But
Well, let me tell you
I
about
wanna
that,
talk
because,
about
yeah,
that part,
but
if you
there is
don't
some,
mind.
there's now an intersection with Dana. We've been telling him about you, and they will ask you to do this too, but we're going to be the first one to ask. Dana's taken a delegation to 5 countries in the Balkans
In
in August, and based on that hearing, we made big progress. He didn't know what was going on until that hearing. In fact, they lied even after the hearing. We had it then. Shirley and I had dinner with him 10 days ago, and when we told him what was really happening, he couldn't believe it. The next day he said, "Joe, I'm going to Macedonia." I would hope you could find a way maybe to join him in some way.
Are you traveling in
yeah,
August?
we're going to. I have to give a speech on terrorism in Oslo, Norway, and so because of the baby, we've been trying to do
That's what I figured.
one trip a year.
You can't do-
And so I committed already to go. I'll find out from Dana when his trip is, because maybe I can go for 3 days by myself.
Well, that's the point.
One way,
We don't know
let
yet
me just
either.
add one
Go ahead.
thing that he doesn't know either, because as you know, leadership is trying to suggest that maybe everyone has to stay, for at least 1 week or
Yeah.
more, which, who knows?
We may be in session first week in
First
August.
week of it, exactly. But the good news
What
is
confusion down there.
he thinks he can get a military plane.
Right.
And if that's the case, then you would be able to potentially move around quickly,
Yeah, and get going.
get in and out, which would be, marvelous. But we were going to check.
We go back on Tuesday, so I'll talk to him
Yeah,
on Tuesday.
that would be terrific.
All right.
I want to make a few comments. Joe had originally wanted me to talk about, the history of the Civic League in the region, in Macedonia in particular, but I actually don't want to go back, too far in history, because there's some really critical issues that I wanted to sort of exchange with you about right now.
Can I say something? She's right. You can't solve anything based on history anymore. We have to make the case, and that's what we keep doing at the U.S. government. But history, it's important for you to know the context.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we went into this, okay?
Sure, indeed. But, since you did that, the so-called nation of Macedonia has only existed since 1991, when, the Balkans, unraveled, the former Yugoslavia. But I wanted to, rather than talk about everything that we've done, and it really did begin when Joe first went over to look at what was happening in the elections. We're only talking about, let's see, well, we're talking about 20 years, but we're really only talking about the last 16 years. of being deeply involved from, let's say, the mid-90s to about 2001, and then there's a big gap. I don't want to have to do that with you, only because it's so complex. I don't think it's going to be particularly helpful, other than to say that the Civic League has consistently been the one group in the United States, and to a certain extent, the one NGO, in the world that's continually focused on what's really happening in Macedonia. And this is what concerns me. You know that when Lavrov and President Trump were in a meeting, when he had behind closed doors just a couple of Russians in that meeting, and you know how everyone reacted.
Yes.
And one of the things that happened then was Senator John McCain, who we are close to, was extremely angry about that, as many people in the House and Senate were. And he wrote this fabulous article, and I just want to quote a little bit about it. It was in the New York Times, and it was called "We Must Support Human Rights." And he said, to view foreign policy as simply transactional is more dangerous than its proponents realize. Depriving the oppressed of a beacon of hope could lose us the world we have built and thrived in. It could cost our reputation in history as the nation distinct from all others in our achievements, our identity, and our enduring influence on humankind. Our values are central to all three. Were they not, we would be just one great power among the others. We'd acquire wealth, power, and then we would recede into the distant past. But we're a more exceptional country than that. We saw the world as it was, and we made it better. And he did the right thing. He really did the right thing at that moment, to say, no, it isn't, we're not going to go back into realpolitik again. And that's where we've been. And when you look at what the U.S. government has done consistently, administration after administration, when it comes to Macedonia, everyone looks the other way. There's, a military presence coming from us. But for 16 years, when the Ohrid Agreement was supposed to go into effect and Albanians were supposed to become equal in a country that basically they helped create when that transition happened with the former Yugoslavia. A lot of it had to do with, the Albanian role, and there was absolutely no violence. But 16 years later, everything has disintegrated, and with the the Obama administration stepping back altogether, handing everything to Europe. We always know whenever the U.S. steps back and hands everything to the EU, it's not going to work because you've got 28 nations, and there never is any leadership unless the U.S. moves in. So what has happened now? You've got the Obama administration moves out, then you have the Trump administration going into a total isolationist mode. And what has happened in this period that no one has been paying attention to is Russia has been doing the same thing in Macedonia. They tried to do it with their election. They're doing the same thing of trying to move in and take power and control over the region. And one of the worst aspects of this is that they're doing something that's been done now since the end of the war in Kosovo. They're united with Serbia and Greece, as Joe said, the Orthodox axis. And what they're trying to do is spread the word throughout the world that, Albanians, I said this to you, I think 3 years ago, it's still the case. A Muslim, potentially terrorist force in the heart of Europe, you have to stop them. They tried to suggest in the last year and a half that Albanians were trying to overthrow the state. Nothing could be further from the truth. So when there is no opposition to this, because we know the U.S. is focused obviously on Syria, North Korea, etc., but when there's no focus on the Balkans, the danger is there, and it isn't, again, it's not if, it's a matter of when. And all of this came to a head in the last couple of years. And I don't know how much you followed this, but it's the reason I raised the issue of what McCain said about human rights. We are the ones, not just the Europeans, we propped up Nikola Gruevski, the prime minister. He's been in power for 16 years. He has fanned the, played the ethnic card over and over again with his own people to try to turn them against Albanians. Gruevski's people calling for things like having people raped in jail and the opposition, being involved in fraud. The range of criminality is intense. And as a result, terrorism. Right now, Gruevski is facing years and years in prison. And for this reason, he has tried to prevent a new government from coming into being. So what initially happened when the wiretapping scandal came out in 2015, all hell broke loose and the international community went crazy. Oh, he's not in control anymore. Oh, we don't know what's going to happen. And why did they do that? Thousands of people went into the streets on both ethnic Macedonian and Albanians against this government. So what happened was the Europeans moved in, initially Germany, and they got everyone to sort of, when I say everyone to come together, now try this, Dan, only the leading ethnic Macedonian parties. Not one leader of an Albanian party initially to say, you've got to come together, you've got to figure this out. Long and short, what happens, they finally bring in some Albanians and they tell Gruevski, you've got to resign, we're going to have a technical government and we're going to have a special prosecution put forth to examine all of the violations and then we'll go to new elections. This dragged on and on and on, and finally the new elections did happen, and when they happened, in the same period that this is going on, there's a new Albanian reality coming into being, and it was coming into being through a man named Ziadin Sela, who's the mayor of Struga. So he, for the first time, started to change, tried to create a true democratic force. And so what happened when he started to succeed and there were new elections, the opposition leader who had discovered all of the wiretaps, he and the Albanian parties had banded together and they won the election. However, the president would not pass on the mandate that they could have a coalition because it wasn't, a huge majority.
Until we had that hearing. The day of that hearing is that when the mandate was passed. They show you.
But then, once that happened, something else happened. And this, again, should show everyone in the U.S. government what's going on. An Albanian was appointed, because it's not a huge election, but appointed within the parliament to be Speaker of the Parliament.
First time.
The minute he came up for that, and now, I think he was presented, the vote had happened, was about to begin, Gruevski sent hundreds of people in to beat everybody up.
In the parliament.
Zaev had blood coming down his face, but they came in to kill Ziadin Sela.
Yes.
They came in to kill him. And it was one guard who saved him.
An Albanian.
Wrapped him up, got him into another room, made them think he was dead, got through, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. And it was at the hearing that Dana showed, that Dana had.
We took those pictures, blew them up.
Yeah, please let me continue.
Put them right there at the hearing.
So, yeah, Joe had them there so that a lot of other members of that committee wouldn't know anything about this, of course, would realize what had gone on. I go back again to the fact that we've had all these years in which our State Department has said, oh, we have the Ohrid Agreement. And if you go talk to them at any point from 2001 on, they say, oh, they're making progress. Everyone's making progress. 16 years later, there's no progress on this. Almost none of the aspects of it were implemented, such as, the right to speak the Albanian language, to have it as part of the political system, the right for Albanians to have a certain percentage at least of jobs in the government. The list goes on. It's all about, again, equality, because Macedonia is the only country in which actually not one ethnic group is a majority. It really isn't. Mm-hmm. But it's been dominated by, an ethnic Macedonian political reality with, unfortunately, parts of the ethnic Albanian political force that has been equally corrupt. So now the time has come. What is going to happen next? And my concern is that if the U.S. continues to stand back, what we're going to see is Russia continuing to move in, Russia and Turkey, by the way, for that matter, which is now becoming a horrifying reality under Erdogan. And what we'll see is a continuing dysfunctional government, but potentially a complete breakdown, the very thing they never wanted to have happen. A complete breakdown, because if there isn't equality, there's no way to go forward. And then what I'm most concerned about, and this will be my last point because I know other people want to talk as well, that besides the issue of Russia, the need for Americans to come forward, the need for Americans to take a major role, not just the European Union, the worst part of the story is that Albanians, and we've talked to you about this, I know, are four religions living side by side in harmony for centuries. Under the circumstances in which they've had, Albanian side have had to survive at the skin of their teeth in many parts of the Albanian lands, for the first time in history, fundamentalist Islam actually did start making some inroads, and it specifically started making inroads in Macedonia, which then
Saudi Arabia
enables, well, it's not probably just Saudi either, it's Turkey too. It enables, the Russians and others to try to say, oh, you can't deal with these people. This is what you have to do with them because they're going to become, ISIS inside. It's exactly the opposite.
Tell them how they did that.
Albanians are people of faith second. They're Albanians first. As you were saying before, we all agree, the most pro-Western, pro-U.S. force. And I had said to both McCain and Rohrabacher, look, don't miss the opportunity here. Look what's happened. Both administrations, even going back to the Bush administration, makes it impossible for Albanians to move, to go west, to be in Western Europe. If you're in Kosovo, it's like a prison. You can't get out unless you, have a long history of being in the West.
Why.
And you're forced then, when you want to get on a plane, but you can go right into Turkey. So what's happened is Turkey is taking advantage of that precisely and doing it right in Macedonia, getting some of the fundamentalist political force to move money in, to move ideas in. This is a tragedy because the very people we need that can stop ISIS from moving in to the West, they're right there, are Albanians, and we should not be turning the other way while this is going on. And I think that's the most important thing. I know, Chairman Royce is really concerned about this issue, and I've talked to him about this before, and he agrees actually. But I don't know, what is going to be possible unless the Congress stands up, because we also know, and I guess this is my final point, Trump administration wants to cut State Department 39%. I know there are problems with the state. Joe and I have both gone up against state more and more, many times. But we can't afford to have no one at home in our embassies, no one that can really, make a difference. And we can't afford it when members of Congress don't have the right information. So if you hear this, it's not true. In this atmosphere that I've just described, Congressman Chris Smith and some of his friends went over to try to say that our Ambassador Bailey was responsible for bringing down the Gruevski government, for raising the opposition and using Soros money to do this. Nothing could be further from the truth.
What gave Chris that?
I know, and it hurts me a lot to know, but he's being, it's sad, and I want to sit down at some point and get his information, but he's been working with the ethnic Macedonians in the United States who are anti-Albanian, and it's the Christian-Muslim card again. Anyone who believes, and we have a lot of people in the U.S. Congress who've been told, oh, Albanians again, they're this Islamic force. And it's absurd because they've
He
always been
overplays that Christian
secular,
part, pro-life.
secular
It slips into
Muslim,
this.
Christians, Roman Catholics, Eastern Orthodox Christians, and Jews living in harmony for centuries. The only other, it's an ideal that people aspire to. The only other place that's done that is Bosnia, and both, of course.
It's surprising because I think Chris's concentration has always been Africa.
Well, but he's got. We know because we worked on the Balkans for a long time together for 20 years, and he used to be. Is he still head of Helsinki? That was his connection, and it was in that context. But he is very. I understand. I appreciate the fact that he's very dedicated to Roman Catholicism. But it's not okay for him to simply take in this information that is wrong. And by the way, I'm not someone who will just, elevate all Albanians. No, I mean, we have, that's impossible. We already see forces within, Macedonia that are, we wouldn't support. But there are very, very good people. This is the time. This is the opportunity to support Ziadin Zella and to counter some of this negative
And that's
information.
why
With
going
that,
there,
I'm finished.
We've told Dana one of the things that he needs to do to give back some spirit to the Albanian people, that America has not abandoned them, is to go and visit Ziadin Zella. Go to Struga where he's mayor, meet with him in his office, and then allow a meeting with Zaev. Let Zella bring Zaev, the majority Slav that's now on the other side, in to meet. So they see that the Albanians are as well connected now in Macedonia as they were in Kosovo when we made our push. Now, one of the things that you, I think, need to know is that since the beginning, I was very popular with the Jewish people right off the bat. My district has 48 synagogues, 46, imagine, and that was just 2/3 of Westchester County. So I got to know Jewish leadership, and the Jewish leadership in Westchester is the leadership for the country. Westchester County is a big place with a lot of money. Scarsdale, Harrison, Okay, so we were able, in the beginning, to get the Jewish lobby to understand what I was doing. Before I met Shirley and she became such an important part of this, I took Lantos with me to a place that looked like North Korea in 1990. It's called Albania. The most unbelievable, isolated, Stalinist, atheistic, communist system anybody could create. This guy, a psychotic, Enver Hoxha, killed thousands of his own people, put them in jails. I have a book about this jail system. You talk about Siberia. They must have learned from this guy. So when I took Lantos there, he had died 5 years before. It was a year, not even a year after the Berlin Wall came down. And Lantos had been telling me, Joe, I see you're a hero with the Albanian people. I want to go to Albania. I want to go. Why would you want to go to Albania, Tom? I've been all over the world. Plus, I'm born in Hungary. I know the Albanian people. I know their history. So if you see that opportunity, well, that opportunity came up when I decided to bring Lantos to Kosovo, and Albania is right next door. I'm not going to go through the whole story. When I write my book, it's going to be incredible how I tricked the communist government on the other side, because they didn't want me to bring anybody. And I'm going in now at the head of human rights to a place that was born with the opposite, right? Not Albanian people, but this is the way the government was. So, point is...
What made you think of this?
The Jews. Because when we were there, it's like divine providence. This Albanian leader was so intimidated that I brought Lantos. He comes out in one of the meetings with a file this thick, and we didn't know what he was doing. He gives it to Lantos, Lantos gives it to me, and I know a number of languages, but it had photographs, it had clippings, it had letters. You know what this file was? These were the letters from the Jews who were rescued by Albanians in World War II in Albania, and they wouldn't let one contact between the rescued and the rescuers go. I sensed what this was. I called my Jewish friend, Eli Streit, in Tel Aviv. I sent him a couple of copies. I wanted to try. He says, Joe, where did you get this? I told him. I ran there with him. We went to Yad Vashem. They couldn't believe it. This was a hidden story. The rescue of Jews in Albania was totally hidden before I brought Lantos there. And I end up with this file. So here, thousands of Jews were saved, but only about 100 have been recognized because many of them was saved during the period when the rescued people and the rescues were alive. Israel demands people are alive. So we're trying to, Yad Vashem is not a charity or a non-profit. It's part of Israel. So we're lobbying that right now, and I got very powerful Jews lobbying with me. But that's not stopping us from doing something in Kosovo, because many of the people that got to Albania got there because Kosovo Albanians risked their lives to do what we did in the Civil War, an underground railroad, getting the Jews house to house to house, till they got where the Italians were in charge, not where the Nazis. Nazis control Yugoslavia, Italians control there. And then later on, they still stood up even after Mussolini died. So we start off with this beautiful way to deal with the Jewish people. Until today, we have amazing support. So when I do big fundraisers, like this one coming up in September with Royce, I always do it with the Jewish community because they can raise a lot more.
Well, we have a PAC. We have the Albanian American Public Affairs Committee, so it's...
But the PAC is limited what it can do, as you know.
Yeah, but it is, the case.
But let me stop right there.
We
we operate with 3 different entities. We have the Civic League, which is a registered lobby, so we have to follow a lot of reports. We have the Albanian American Public Affairs Committee, which is basically a PAC, and we follow those reports. And we have a foundation mainly to educate people. Who are the Albanian people? Why are the Italians, what's the history of Albanians in Italy? What's the history with Albanians and Jews? And this has now raised in 30 years the image of the Albanian people with the Jewish community and with the Italian community. This last parade we had, the Italians themselves had their own float.
Staff, Blair Bartlett. Blair Bartlett.
I remember Blair, yeah. I think she was here 2 years ago. I met her. Yeah. But who would be most informed, or should be most informed, about the issues of South Asia?
Blair covers me on all foreign affairs.
Okay. So we're going to submit some stuff to Blair. We'll tell her that you have been briefed.
We met. Yep.
It's important, and that she'll decide what you should see and not see. And I think it's important that you see at least the recent stuff.
I brought a few things that we can drop off. What do you think? I mean, one of the frustrations we have actually with the committee is that, and it's I understand it's Chairman Rice's decision to have sort of most of the major hearings happening in the subcommittees and not happening in the full committee. I don't know whether that's still the case, but there's been no major hearing in the full committee on the Balkans for a very, very long time. And I'm just hoping that will be kept in mind.
How he rotates them. And I don't know what his personal agenda is.
Right.
The Republicans imposed self-imposed term limits on themselves. So this is Ed's
It's his last year.
Last term as chairman.
So 2 years.
Yeah, he has a 2-year. The next Congress, he will no longer be the chairman. Whether it's Dana, whether it's
who knows?
It's up to the steering committee usually decides that. So I don't know what Ed's. I've only been there for 2 years, so I don't know what Ed's history was, what his interests were in foreign affairs before he became chair. He's from California. He has a large mixed immigration community, people from all over the world in his district.
And he's very good at responding to everyone.
Yes.
Actually.
So I'm not too sure, but it's something that maybe we'll have Blair take a look at and see if he rotates, and if it's been 4 years since there's been a hearing on the...
It's more than that.
Yeah, whatever it is.
The full committee.
Yeah, whatever the full committee... how long it's been, maybe he rotates it, and it could be that maybe something's coming up in the next 2 years that we don't know.
If you and Dana mentioned it, I think he would, because he likes what we do. We've had briefings with him. We've had big fundraisers with him with the Jewish community. We don't ask for something because we have fundraisers. The point is, he knows us, and I think it's time that we had a bigger look at Southeast Europe, especially the areas that are have the most potential for this kind of conflict. And it's certainly where the Albanians are, the Slavs, especially now with Russia circling like a shark.
Well, anytime there's the United States pulls out of an area, it creates a void. Someone's filling that void.
Exactly.
In some places in the world, it's been China. In other places, it's been Russia.
Yeah.
But whenever there's particularly a country where the people are in need of something, the United States doesn't fulfill its
When you leave, if you're gonna
moral
leave, you have to fill this
obligations
out.
anyhow to feed people and
Give each one.
supply them with medical needs, things like that. Someone comes in and fills that void because they see it's a great advantage that the $600, as Joe said.
Exactly. And Dan, the one area though that may be difficult is that Dana's view of Russia, I'm sure you've heard about, is dramatically different.
That's not our view.
I haven't met one Albanian in the world, especially anyone who lived through the time under, Tito and others, that sees Russia as this shining light. Not at all. Or
Dana fights everyone over
I know.
Russia.
Well, I understand that we shouldn't have this sort of, extreme, anti-Russian viewpoint, but nevertheless, he's really missing the danger, I think, in the region. It's a fact.
I keep telling the Albanian people, lobby is important, but what is just as important is to educate the world about who the Albanian people are, because they've been buried for years with propaganda. Greek, Serb, you name it. And now we have to figure out how to peel that back. We're doing it, but it's not yet done. Now, the first thing the enemies of Shirley and Joe would say, what do you want to try to do? Raid Albania? You trying to now remove those borders? Are you crazy? We have the Helsinki? I said, no, we're not trying to do that. But while they're there, unfairly, without their own consensus, they didn't vote to be split up that way after World War I. They need equal rights, justice, all the things that we expect here. And that's what we're fighting for right now. What happens later,
Whole organization.
we'll see. So there it is. You got the big picture, and you got the small picture in the sense from Macedonia. No, there's Macedonia. It's more important that you understand what's going on in Macedonia, but you have the big picture too there. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. You guys have been friends for a long time. A lot of these people at this table I've known for a long time.
Exactly.
You've been good to me. And all I want to do is go down there and do what's right for America and what's right for the rest of the world. I was blessed by getting on foreign affairs because it's not traditionally a seat for the only Republican from New York City. Right. Usually they stick us on like financial services because of the Wall Street details.
Right.
But having the opportunity to deal in world affairs, and there are a lot of them, and homeland security is incredibly important to our area. When you talk about the subcommittee I am chairman of in Homeland, has jurisdiction over terrorism and natural disasters. I don't have to tell our friend about a natural disaster that happened 5 years ago right here. And so that's very important to our community as well.
I just want to tell you that as an Albanian community, we strongly want to support you, and as much as we can. Me and Abe, you know way longer than you know me, but May 9th, as I told you, Congressman, we had a meeting with Congressman Donovan. I just want to reestablish that relationship, because Dibra, I don't know exactly the year, it was a sistership created.
When I was in the borough president's office,
Yeah.
we were sister cities, Debra and Staten Island, sister cities.
So, whatever reason, that sort of died out a little bit, and I just wanted to reestablish that relationship. But as I told you on that meeting with Julian, the Albanian community has grown very strong in Staten Island, alongside with Marco Kepi. We're gonna join forces, and we're gonna do everything possible, and I really mean it. Not just we're gonna support you in any way possible.
Thank you, I appreciate
Marco's on Golden staff.
Yeah.
Right?
We're working
I
on
know Marco for a while.
We're working on educating the community, to register. There's a lot of Albanians in Staten Island. They're not registered to vote. We're educating them, with the Board of Elections. So eventually, like I said, we want to support you.
That's where power is. People's ability.
We are gathered today in this table. What I see is for two things. Number one, it's a good for this country. Number two, it's a good for the Albanian people there, and the Albanian people are here. And number three is for us. So, as a congressman, it's part of a business. And you guys are the politician, we are the businessmen. But at the end of the day, everything falls to one group. What is good for The politician, it's a good for the businessman. That's how gets at the end of the day.
Well, it should be.
Yeah, that's the way it is. It's you help me, I help you. That's the way it works. I'm not going to talk about Macedonia because Macedonia. But one thing, when Macedonia was created as a republic at 91, was supported by this country, number one. And now this country have to move forward and to tell the Macedonians, like, we support you for becoming a multi-ethnic country, not one ethnic country. And Gruevski, it's moving forces like in a one ethnic country. And this is not acceptable. Going in the parliament on April 27, beating the leaders, beating to death, from people from outside groups, from criminals, from, I call them a terrorist, you know, and then you being caught in a camera and video, and only I gave them a 6 months to a year probation. You know, to those people who destroyed the parliament, you know, I never saw such a thing. Now, for years, for hundreds of years, Europe always is supposed to do their job in the Balkans. Never did. Always lie to us, lie. Now, Russia and Turkey and both sides are trying to approach. Now, if they are approaching and we standing back, you know, I think it's going to be a revolution in the future. And this is, we can afford, we as an Albanian American, to let this happen, you know.
Very good point.
That's
No, it's a very good point.
so.
The Russians have been looking for a warm water port for years, and that's why they're so pissed off at Montenegro right now for putting NATO in. You know, and they're Slavs too, the Montenegro. But you have now a situation where behind Gruevski you have Putin. He's already said that if something happens, that means they're going to try to make something happen, and they're going to try to make it look like an ethnic battle again, like they tried to do with the in Kosovo. Then they're going to come because they feel they have an interest. They're desperately looking now, Putin, to extend Russian influence right there in the southern Southeast Europe. And I mean, we'll share with you some articles that we've picked up on this. Now, what do we do best? The thing that we do best is to try to prevent things from happening. Because once they happen, it's a mess.
Just clean it up.
So that's what hearings are about. And I said this at this last hearing. You'll see me. Rohrbacher couldn't believe. He said, boy, you really saved the best to the last. Because at the last I said, hey, let me tell you something. You're always telling the Albanians about Greater Albania. The deal today is still Greater Serbia. Because Serbia is looking to extend its influence on these Albanian lands. That's one of the reasons they don't recognize Kosovo. And, by the way, 4 other countries in the European Union don't recognize Kosovo because of the lobbying of Serbia. So there's poison in the water. And what's it going to take now? How much more do the Albanians have to put up with before you then see something you don't want to see? Because, believe me, there's a lot of stuff going on you don't see. They're trying to keep the peace. They lost many men, many people during the war. But the point is, we got to be careful because there is a larger geopolitical thing going on with the Slavs in the Balkans, with their Russian. You know where the Slavs came from? They came out of Ukraine in the 7th century. They speak the same language as the Russians. It just changed. It's like, you know, French and Latin. It changes because of geography. Croatians are Slavs. They happen to be Roman Catholic. Serbs are Slavs. Bosnians are Slavs. Montenegrins are Slavs. You name it. Now, do we have anything against the Slavs? No. We think the Slav people are good people. These governments, though, are all motivated by political power, and corruption's a big part of that. And when you have a poor class of people like the Albanians, who could be today the poorest in Europe, next to the Bosnians, money can be used at the fringes. Not every Albanian will accept $600 from the Saudis so that all the daughters put on the headscarves. Some of them are doing that in Macedonia. And then those are the ones that they take pictures of and say, ah, look at these Albanians. They're going to now threaten Europe with their religion. Far from it. These are people
Joe,
who...
one second, I'm gonna be done in 1 second, and then you guys can talk. The bottom line is this: as an American, what's the interest of us moving forward there? If we're not going to move, I think Erdogan, it's paying a lot of money to the people there, millions of dollars, with Putin, just to put trouble among the Albanian people between each other. And if we are staying aside, they're moving forward. So if we move forward, they have no choice. They're going to stay aside because America and Europe, for over 20 years, invest a lot of the roads, a lot of the tunnels, a lot of the expressways. Everything came from American money. And if it comes from American money, my friend, you stay aside because I'm here, not you. This is it. Now, talking about Congressman here the problems, what we face here in Staten Island and in New York and in the U.S. Most of the Albanian peoples here are having a big problem with the immigration. A lot of families are being separated. They're together there for 20 years, 20-something years. All of a sudden, because of the lawyers' fault, which they don't follow up, or they don't got their money on time, a lot of the people, they're being deportation back home. They're making them to stay there 10 years, and after 10 years now you have to parole to apply. You know, but for 10 years you destroy them, and that's not what democracy is. Democracy is, you investigate me who I am, I'm gonna prove you who I am, and if I don't qualify, back home. If I do qualify, don't leave me up in the air. This is what I think. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good words. Now you guys, thank you.
We have this meeting today, and we talked about Albanians in Balkans, especially Albanians in Macedonia. So what do you think should be the U.S. role, especially in the Balkans?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone. It was a real education for me hearing firsthand from people who have experienced what's happening in the Balkans, who have family there, and are very concerned about the United States' role. As we've learned through history, for the United States' self-interest, when there's stability in the world, when there's peace in the world, where we're helping people who are in need of our help, whether it be for education, whether it's for medical care, whether it's supplying people with food, or just helping create peace in a country. It's better for the United States. When there's stability in the world, it's an interest of national security for the United States as well as everyone else.
Këto me disa shok miq për të pakahur zotin Donovan, I cili kemi shpresë në të ardhmen ta ndihmojnë për çështjen shqiptare, sidomos atë në Maqedoni. Ish Congressmani Dioguardi I parashtroi ose të paktën informoi Congressmanin për situatën në Maqedoni, kështu që ne jemi me shpresë në të ardhmen Congressmani Donovan do të jetë përkrahës I komunitetit këtu në Staten Island, New York, por po ashtu edhe për çështjen shqiptare në Maqedoni. Që të sigurohemi që edhe ne shqiptarët të jemi pjesë e atij shteti maqedonisë, që jemi të barabartë në fjalë të jemi përfaqësues të barabartë. Ne duam vendinjen tonë dhe jemi tepër të fokusuar për situatën se çfarë bëhet atje, kështu që me ndihmën e Congressmani Donovan shpresojmë që të na ndihmojë që ne si shqiptar njëherë për gjithmonë të zgjedhim aspiratat, çështjet tona dhe interesin ton kombëtar që në Maqedoni. I falenderoj.
Jam këtu me ftesë të Dioguardit, sepse që në fillimet tona kemi pas lidhje me Ligën Shqiptare Amerikane, e cila na ka vlerësuar shumë për kontributin që japim ne në Shqipëri për harmoninë ndërfetare, dhe në këtë rast unë u bashkova këtij takimi kaq të rëndësishëm me kongresmenin, I cili tregoi vlerat nga të gjithë folësit, vlerat e kombit shqiptar.
Faton, ti një përfaqësues ose përfaqësuesi I Ligës Qytetare Shqiptare-Amerikane në Kosovë, Maqedoni, Shqipëri, në Ballkan. Çfarë aktivitete keni ndërmarrë dhe sa e përfshirë është Liga Qytetare Shqiptare si lobi shqiptar në Washington, në SBA, dhe çfarë bëni ju atje më konkretisht?
Faleminderit shumë. Është 2017 është në 15 vjetorin e angazhimit tim në Ligën Qytetare
shqiptare amerikane dhe prej Shqipërisë të përfshi edhe Kosovën, Maqedoninë, shqiptarët Malzi, shqiptarët në luginën e Preshevës. Liga ka qenë zëri kryesor, unik, i përbashkët për çështjen edhe kauzën kombëtare në Ballkan, kisha me thonë. Ajo që ne bëjmë tani atje ka të bëjë me koordinimin më të mirë ndërmjet punës që e bëjmë ne me miqtanë në Kongresin e Shtetit Bashkuara dhe njerëzve kyç me cilët punojmë në gjitha visët shqiptare, veçanërisht në Kosovë, veçanërisht tash Maqedoni me krizën e fundit elektorale dhe parazgjedhore që ishte atje, si dhe me ndryshimet politike që po shpresojmë se do të japin rezultatin për cilët shqiptarët kanë punuar. Unë mendoj përfundimisht që roli i ligës është i pazëvendësueshëm. Zëri shqiptarëve në Washington përveç kanaleve zyrtare ka nevojë të dëgjohet edhe përmes njerëzve të tjerë, të cilët janë tash në gjeneratën e dytë, të njerëzve që kanë linë dhe janë rrinë në Shtetet e Bashkuara dhe shpresoj shumë që një pjesë e madhe edhe tyne do ta vazhdoj punën që e ka bërë lobi deri më tani dhe do ta rigjallëroj me aktivitete të ndryshme të cilat shkojnë në favor të kauzës kombëtare. Domethënë në përgjithësi liga mbetet në rolin e vet elitar në lidhje me miqësinë tonë strategjike dhe të pazavendësueshme me Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës dhe shpresoj se ky rol vetëm do të vjen të rritën të ardhmen për shkak se problemet nuk kanë mbaruar, që dini edhe vetë, sfidat e mëdha janë edhe për Shqipërinë, përkundër faktit që ka bërë progres të mahnitshëm kohëve të fundit veçanërisht pas komunizmit, po ballafaqohet me sfidat mëdha, sikurse Kosova, sikurse shqiptarët Maqedoni, Malzi dhe ata në luginën e Preshevës. Domethënë, përgjithsa kanë sfida dhe probleme, unë besoj që vetëm me kë shqiptarëve që mund me i çu këto sfida edhe probleme drejtësisë janë Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës dhe Washingtoni.